FREENBECKY. A love story that writes itself. Not every love story arrives with an introduction. Some love stories begin with declarations. Some arrive with headlines, confirmations, carefully worded statements. Others unfold loudly, demanding to be seen, heard, and acknowledged. But the rarest kind of love story doesn't announce itself at all. Simply exists. Freen Sorocha and Becky Armstrong's connection never entered the world asking to be understood. It didn't come with rules or expectations. It didn't demand belief. It didn't even ask for permission. It moved quietly, confidently, and steadily, as though it knew that what was real didn't need to rush. At first, nothing about them seemed extraordinary. Two actresses, one project, one shared professional space. The kind of beginning audiences have seen countless times before. And yet, from the very first moments, something felt different. Not dramatic, not explosive, just grounded. People couldn't quite name it, but they felt it. A sense of calm where chemistry is usually loud. A sense of familiarity where performance is usually obvious. It wasn't the kind of spark that burns fast and bright. It was the kind that settles in slowly and stays warm. And without anyone intending it, the story began to write itself. The quiet recognition between two people. Long before fans spoke about romance, they spoke about ease. Freen and Becky didn't behave like people trying to impress each other. They behaved like people who had already passed that stage. Their interactions carried no tension, no stiffness, no need to overperform closeness. There was comfort, the kind that usually comes after time, not at the beginning. They listened to each other fully. They waited for each other naturally. They moved with an unspoken awareness of one another's presence. This wasn't something that could be choreographed. It showed up in the smallest details. A pause to let the other finish speaking, a glance that said go ahead, a smile that arrived without effort. Psychologists often say that recognition is one of the strongest forces in human connection. The feeling that someone sees you without needing explanation. That kind of recognition creates safety. And safety creates openness. That's what people were witnessing. Not attraction trying to become something else. But recognition finding its place. When comfort becomes the language of love. As time passed, comfort replaced formality entirely. They shared space like people who didn't need to negotiate it. Sitting close wasn't a choice, it was instinct. Touch didn't look rehearsed. It looked habitual. The way Freen would subtly guide Becky through crowds, or the way Becky leaned into Freen's presence without thinking, spoke volumes without saying a word. This wasn't about physical affection alone. It was emotional alignment. They knew when to speak and when to stay quiet. They knew when the other needed space and when they needed closeness. They read each other fluently, like a language learned through care, not effort. Fans noticed something important. Nothing between them felt rushed. There was no urgency to define. No pressure to label. No need to prove. In a world obsessed with speed, their slowness felt revolutionary. Why LGBTQ+ fans saw themselves here. For many LGBTQ+ fans around the world, FREENBECKY became more than a pairing. They became a mirror. Not because Freen and Becky made statements. Not because they confirmed identities. But because their connection reflected something deeply familiar. A love that doesn't need to announce itself to be valid. A bond that exists quietly in a world that often demands explanation. A relationship shaped by trust rather than visibility. Queer love has historically been forced into two extremes. Hidden or performative. What Freen and Becky offered was a third option. Peaceful. Their connection felt like a space where love could breathe without being interrogated. Many fans said they didn't feel like they were watching celebrities. They felt like they were watching something they hoped for themselves. A relationship built on gentleness, mutual respect, and emotional safety. That kind of representation doesn't shout. Settles. The emotional intelligence that changed the conversation. What truly set FREENBECKY apart wasn't romance speculation. It was emotional maturity. They never competed. They never diminished one another. They never used their bond as leverage. Instead, they amplified each other quietly. Freen's steadiness offered grounding. Becky's warmth offered openness. Together they created balance, not by completing each other, but by respecting each other's wholeness. This kind of dynamic challenged many assumptions people had about love. That passion must be chaotic. That intimacy must be dramatic. That closeness must be proven publicly. Freen and Becky showed something else entirely. That love can be calm and still be deep. And that idea changed how fans talked about connection, not just theirs but their own. Why the story keeps writing itself. Years later, the fascination hasn't faded. Not because fans are waiting for answers, but because the connection continues to feel alive. It evolves naturally, without forcing narrative arcs or climaxes. It remains rooted in the same qualities that drew people in at the beginning: respect, care, and authenticity. The story continues because it isn't trying to end. It doesn't need a conclusion. It doesn't need resolution. Some stories aren't meant to be finished, only witnessed. A love defined by presence, not proof. In the end, what makes FREENBECKY iconic isn't speculation or symbolism. It's presence. The way they show up for each other. The way they share space. The way they choose gentleness again and again. Their love story, whatever its shape, isn't powerful because it's visible. It's powerful because it's felt. And that is why it writes itself. Not with announcements, not with confirmation, but with quiet moments that speak louder than words. Because sometimes the truest love stories aren't told. They're lived.